Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 60th episode of Analytics Wednesday. Today's topic is the use of technology for ESG compliance, where we cover compliance management systems. And our esteemed speaker for the evening is Mr. Gaurav Jain, the founder of LexComply. This event is brought to you and supported by the Government of Canada Trade Commissioner Service. I'd like to just take a moment and introduce SAMA Audit Systems and Software Private Limited to all the attendees who are online. SAMA Audit Systems has been at the forefront of technology solutions for audit analytics. We have our flagship product, Caseware Idea. Very recently, we brought on board Caseware Working Papers. We have LexComply, the legal compliance management system. We have Alissa, which is a tier one financial solutions continuous monitoring system, and we are in the domain and in the specialization of tools and solutions for auditors, accountants, investigators, and controllers. With that brief introduction, I would like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Gaurav Jain. Mr. Gaurav Jain is the founder of LexComply. He has more than 18 years of expertise in compliance management, corporate law compliance, due diligence, FIPB, venture capital fund joint ventures, equity participation, NGOs, and spearheads the team at RSJ in New Delhi. He's the brain behind LexComply, the compliance management tool. He's also academically a fellow member of the ICSI and a Bachelor of Law. So we are very excited to listen to Gaurav this evening on the use of technology for ESG compliance management systems. Gaurav, over to you, and I will be enabling screen share for you right now. Deepji sir, would you like to just say anything at this moment?
Yeah, I think I'll just like to add on a personal note that Gaurav is a co-founder for a technology startup, doing extremely well for in a much needed segment in the country, and he is very ably supported by his wife Pooja, who's a chartered accountant, who's also co-founder along with Gaurav. So I think just wanted to add on a personal note about Gaurav. So Gaurav, over to you.
Thank you, sir. And I'm obliged that you give me this opportunity to exchange my thoughts and share my views with esteemed members present in this call. Uh, so the topic for today, as you have chosen, so obviously every topic that Sama audit team choose for these webinars is so important and so pertinent. So today's you have given me this responsibility to talk on this use of technology for ESG compliances and the management of those compliances through compliance management system. So I'm sure the ESG compliances, as you know, is becoming a talk of the town for some time now, and a lot of things have happened globally and in India, and the companies are working towards. A lot of companies are working towards voluntary disclosures. SEBI have done some bit around it, making certain things voluntarily and then giving some sort of a hint to make it mandatory or guidelines to be made it mandatory in a year's time. So, what I will be doing is I'll be just taking the things from very layman perspective, simplified perspective, so that we can try to achieve some bit out of the whole gamut of ESG compliances. So I'm sure, as we all know, that this is ESG basically comprised of environmental compliances, social security norms. Within social security norms, we have uh, uh, aspects covering the human manpower or human aspect, which is part of the organization as employees, and outside the organization as customers. And the thirdly, most important of which has been again has been almost preferred to be complied with is a governance, which is primarily pertaining to the corporate governance practices and the transparency to be ensured around that. So, what I, out of my limited understanding and reading through and getting to interact with some of the senior members, so this the entire ESG process can be primarily can be construed under these following stages. Number one, we need to understand what is an obligation. or statutory obligation for these ESG compliances, so that once we understand these ESG obligations, we are able to plan the implementation of it. Uh, Implementation of it in a different multiple ways, by way of practices, by way of implementing the plant and machineries to control the environmental thing, to follow the best of the practices for making the right product as per the guidelines issued by various authorities for the product or the services. Now, the important aspect that have come up in this ESG is to present an impact assessment of the practices that is being followed by the organization, so as to evaluate to what extent the company is able to uh, uh, ensure that the expectations in terms of ESG is being taken care of. And if there is a gap, to take correct to assess that gap, take corrective measures, followed by reporting. Now, as of now, the reporting is voluntary to the authorities, but yes, a lot of Indian companies as well have started reporting not only to the stakeholders, not to the authorities, but to at least to the stakeholders. Wherein these reports finally actually also goes to the authorities. Like annual report always goes to authorities, whether it is Ministry of Corporate Affairs or SEBI or other departments to whom you send it for different purposes. So these are the stages what I construe as professional are important from this ESG concept so far as, and obviously there will be can be a lot of micro elements involved under each stage. Now, why we go on? So if we understand the detail of each of these alphabet ESG. So what again, from my perspective or as a professional, what I understand that the whole idea behind implementing this environmental part is to ensure that while we are growing our business, our practices or business practices should be eco-friendly, so that we do not harm the environment while we are doing our business practices. Now, for doing that, we need to understand what are various obligations which are being bestowed on us as an organization by statutory authorities or other agencies. Now, for doing that, while we have to evaluate, I think some of the key factors which impact those obligations, I have tried to list it out. Though we have a system wherein this intelligence is being built up, so out of that expertise of 7 to 8 years, we have been practicing around compliance management. Number one is the nature of the business activity. Now, depending upon whether you are into manufacturing, trading, or service, the element of impact which you can give on, which you can have on environment depends upon that activity. So while you're manufacturing, it is expected that the discharge of pollutant is more than the trading or service activity. While similarly, it is also important that the obligation on any entity regarding environmental regulations, uh, as if now you know the green building accreditation. The green building accreditation can be obtained only by the owner. It cannot be obtained by the tenant of that building. So that means while you are erecting the building, while you are maintaining the building, that the environmental part of it, the obligation will be more uh, on the users. Uh, we'll take up the questions. You can please continue to post. We'll take up the question in the Q&A session if you don't mind. So, accordingly, the ownership of the building depends on that one of the criteria. The nature of consumables. As you know, while we are doing a business activity, we consume fuel, we consume lot of type of chemicals, we consume lot of type of insecticides. May consume that. So, depending upon that, there are regulations for e-waste, there are regulations for hazardous chemicals, there are regulations for biodegradable, non-biodegradable, or hazardous waste. So all depends upon that. So what is the type of consumables, and in turn, what is the kind of byproduct or the waste you are generating in turn, like plastic waste. Recently, we all know that with effect from 1st of July, the government have banned certain list of single-use plastics, right? Now, single-use plastics similarly is a product that a lot of companies were manufacturing, like spoons, glasses. They were common things, right? Now, similarly, for example, if my product, I'm into an air conditioning business, wherein we know by air conditioning, there is a lot of emission Earlier, there were used to be gases which were used, which were not eco-friendly, non-green gases, and subsequently there were guidelines being issued, and there were phases which were provided that while you are manufacturing air conditioners, you need to ensure that the emission are less. Similarly, there are cases, uh, for example, RO that we use within our household. There's a lot of the water that get discharged while we are consuming the water post filtration. So there are also technologies being implemented now, or the cases are pending with Supreme Court about it, that how the technology should be implemented or what regulations should be implemented to control that wastage of water, because that is again not an eco-friendly uh, process of utilizing the resources or utilizing a uh, service. So again, as I said, depending upon the product, if you are into pharma product, or if you are into paints, or if you are into diagnostic activities, so the impact on environment lot depends on that. So while we are evaluating the applicability or the laws applicable from the environmental perspective, these are key factors. The last but not the least is the business location. So again, from the very, very layman perspective, so if you have a, for example, hotel in a city as a comparison to hotel in the at the beach side. So therein, I think we can all visualize how the environmental impact will be different. Or the hotel on a hilly area. So the environmental impact of a hotel in the city area vis-a-vis at the sea area, seaside, or in the hillside, accordingly, the impact will change drastically. So while we are evaluating the environmental laws or impact of environmental part of it and on the environment of our business activities, we feel these are the some of the key things which will have an impact on environmental regulation. I'm sure there will be more, but we'll just try to summarize as much as possible. Likewise, if we go on to the next part of it, which is your X, right? Social security or society at large. So I think again, as I said, the objective is how we are growing with the welfare of the employees in societies. Now, the welfare of the employees in societies. So I think from the society perspective, I think we can very well relate that while we are serving products to the society, so one is the product or services that we give to the society. So we need to ensure that we have like food safety regulations are there. We have telecom regulations. We have TRI who takes care of cable network solutions. We have pharma drugs and cosmetic regulations. So all these regulations are any sector which is sensitive to the health or of the society or the customers, you always have these regulations. Customer consumer protection regulations are there. Then you have so many tribunals where you can file the complaint. IT Act at some stages you can also consider that society because it talks about your personal breach of personal data, which is very, very confidential. So to what extent you can take it, it all depends upon the maturity to levels of the ESG, how you are taking that ESG part of it. But please, I think data in today's world is the most important right of an individual that they want their data to be confidential, right? So I think that's the fundamental right that everybody is claiming today. So that is also very, very important. From the employee's perspective, one is while we are serving the society by creating the employment, however, there are regulations which depends upon the type of the business activity you are doing, the nature of operations in which a particular employee is being employed. For example, the level of welfare required for a worker working in an ITS company compared to in a mine, there's a huge lot of a difference because the risk of a worker working in a mine is reasonably high as comparison to a gentleman or the lady working in an ITS company. So the level of regulations for the welfare of the employee will vary. Similarly, as we all know, for female employees, we have special regulations from the welfare perspective, whether it is a maternity leave, whether to have a crèche, whether to have a working hours. In recent times, you must be seeing a lot of notifications coming up wherein the companies who want to have female employees working in a night shift, the government has made specific provisions for the welfare and the safety of the female employees. That yes, the companies. So on one side, what government is ensuring that females employees also get that opportunity to work and showcase their talent, even for global operations, because global operations usually need working beyond 8 p.m. Uh, However, without compromising the safety and the welfare of those female employees. So the welfare regulations have come up. So that's again an important part, the timings. Total number of employees is again a very important, because within our, if we look into our labor laws, uh, provisions for canteen, provision for restrooms, provision for crèche, provisions uh, for ambulance room, provisions for safety officers, depends lots on the number of employees being employed in a particular shift or a particular company at a particular location. So, and also, these again, from our perspective, are the factors with which, while we are evaluating the impact, should be kept in mind while we are identifying the compliance or the obligations or the risk associated with, or planning for ESG obligation reporting. I'll just quickly move on to the next slide, which is the last, the governance part of it. I think a lot has happened in India and globally across. We all know that a lot of governance reports are being submitted. Uh, Investors have been very, very sensitive about governance. Independent directors have been introduced as a concept only to ensure or to strengthen this corporate governance part of it, and to ensure that there is a transparency on the any punitive actions. Now, for this, it is again, we know all these provisions are also there while the auditors are auditing. They also comment on the business continuity part or the various risks associated, or about the material actions have which are being taken against the companies. So lot depends upon again whether the company, from the implementation perspective, I would say, if there's a larger interest of public involved, then the governance has more relevance. I'm not saying it has a no relevance in case of unlisted companies, but the relevance is, as we all know, is more when there is a involvement of public, or there is an involvement of banks in it. Also, as we all know, there are obligations about formation of committees and or audit committees or compliance committees being formed, or vigilance committees being formed basis capital turnover and the borrowings, all the listed and unlisted status. So I think these all things make it very important. It's also relevant from the perspective that again, the sector which we are working is very, very important. So, every sector have its a typical practices, historical practices. There are certain sectors we all know are historically non-compliant. Historically, they have whether listed or unlisted. Historically, they are not organized or structured. Uh, I would not like to name a sector, but we all know that there are some old sectors wherein, because of the trade, they have no choice. They flout. They do non-compliances around a lot of labor laws. Normally, actions are initiated. A lot of raids happen on them. But all now, what will happen with this is, I think, from the impact assessment perspective, while the auditors already comment on these things, still there will be like a further check on this beyond SEBI. So today, governance is mostly linked with listed companies, mostly with the listed companies. But I think once this ESG concept start flowing into from listed to unlisted, and most important, we all know this ESG concept is not has how this has been triggered or how this has gained so much of the importance. So I think the final thing is money. Investors globally have said, boss, we want to invest in entities who have planned for ESG, who are ensuring the sustenance and adherence to ESG norms. So finally, and every business person or every individual likes money, right? So I think whether it will be listed or unlisted entities, we all know that India has becoming very close to becoming like a unicorn hub as well. And these unicorns are also getting listed subsequently. And while these things are also very, very important, we time and again hear the news that some founder is asked to go or leave the company on because of the governance issues. Now, this is a very, very common statement we hear in startup world. Every year there are one or two instances like that. So this is, I think, very, very important part of it. But and important because entire ESG is driven by investors group. They are not investing rightly. So I think that is, we all understand, to drive us to do something, unless or until there is an involvement of money, we don't get right around it. This is my personal view. Obviously, nothing as an organizational view, but this is what I have construed out of so many communications going around. So in crisp or in limited terms, I'm just trying to explain what is the ESG stages, what are the typical things involved around it. I'm not taking certain things which I'm sure you must have read so much, has been done on the various seminars. I'll just quickly come to how technology can help you basically in achieve these objectives. I think the first and foremost for every, while we are talking about compliance management, okay, or of ESG part of it, and as from the factors, it is so evident that it is not that simple thing to identify the applicable laws and regulations. So technology helps you to identify the relevant laws basis the data points. So this technology, thankfully, is also available. We have tried after years of research, we have are able to establish a thing to some extent or to a larger extent, wherein if you put in the data point, the system can tell you what are the applicable laws to your entity at different locations, basis more than the factors what we have described above. And it is very, very relevant to today's world that while you are evaluating it, it should be completely data driven. It should not be a general statement like steel sector or real estate sector or automobile sector. The sector is only just one part. Of within automobile, are you manufacturing? Are you trading? Do you have a service station? The things will change dramatically or substantially because of these few factors. So we cannot generalize the applicability of the law depending upon the sector or the state. So it has to be multiple data points. The second point is again, so while we have identified, okay, these are certain laws which are applicable. Now, within that certain laws, what are the relevant laws pertaining to your entity? Again, I just take a simple example, e-waste. Now, while we talk about e-waste, now within e-waste, it is applicable on manufacturer, producer, refurbisher, dismantler, bulk consumer as well. Now, which is the category you are falling in, the applicability of the compliance out of 30, 40, or 50 compliance will be governed by your business activity. Again, the data point. So whether you are a recycler, then the set of compliances will be different. If you are a bulk consumer, set of compliances will be different. And whether you are falling in the definition of bulk consumer or not, that is again a criteria. So herein, the technologies are becoming intelligent enough wherein if you put in these data points, they will give you the list of the compliances subsequently. Now, while you have identified the laws and the compliances, now it is very, very important while the spread of the organization is so much that it is difficult or next to impossible to manage it manually. Because once you create the checklist, give it to the users, then you start following up them periodically, remind them to give the checklist back, and you create a report in a harmonized manner. It's a very time consuming job. So what you can do is you can put up all that masters in a compliance management system along with the responsibility metrics so that there are reminders, there are escalations, and the right dashboards, management dashboards are created at the right point of time. And if somebody is not doing that compliance, then they can always escalation goes to the management level. However, we are not saying only compliance allocation coupled with the compliance knowledge as well, because that is very, very important. Unless and until the user knows what to do, how to do, what is an exemption, what is the form, what is the government website, what is the notification, legal updates. Today's world, everything has been, I think, integrated with each other. All the departments, all the location, multiple group companies have been integrated together from the stage of identification till legal updates through technology platforms, which we today say is compliance management systems. So herein the technology can help you from end to end in knowing the compliances, making the team aware about the compliances, managing the reporting part of it, evaluating the compliance status and the impact of non-compliances, taking the corrective measures, and at the end, if there are regulatory changes, the system should be updated with the regulatory changes. So with this part, what I will do, I'll just quickly showcase you something. Few instances are somehow LexComply tool as a tool works from the compliance management perspective, and then we'll take up the questions from the members. So it's like every member will have their own login IDs. In case of group companies, the management, the CFOs, chief internal auditors, or compliance officers, directors, independent directors, managing directors, they can have I would say, a bird's eye view at the apex level, be it without any limitations of the geographies, not only geographies within India, but outside India. So you have all these charts coming up wherein you can see the compliance trends, what are coming up compliances, how many not reported, out of the reported, how many are compliant and non-compliant, the risk associated with the non-compliances, and the delays are with which department, which location, which country, coupled with a lot of filters, continent-wise, country-wise. Then you have reporting wherein you can choose the subject as well. So while you're talking about ESG, so you can choose uh, the department you want to check for. So, for example, you want to check for HR, you can just have the reports of the HR from here. Or if you want to check for EHS, you can have the admin part of it. If you want to have the governance, you can have the secretarial part of it. So all these reports can generate it on a different parameters. Similarly, whatever documents have been uploaded, you have this DMS also, wherein you can download the proof of compliances of these compliances around environmental, social security, and governance being reported time and again, and all the legal updates also being coming to your dashboards from time and again under different countries and different statutes, which is available to you. Likewise, every user will have their own dashboard within a entity to manage their registration, event-based, date-based, ongoing, or event-based compliances in different ways. And the beauty of these applications is it is not limited to any particular state or country. It can widespread to any number of countries. Like we had implemented across more than 22 geographies for various entities. So these are the dates. If I click on a particular date, I can see the compliance obligation associated with, say, for example, in a contract labor, the payment has to be done by 10th. So, and for if you want to read the compliance detail, here is the libraries. Here is the library for you to have this entire literature being available at the readily. And whatever changes have happened, you can see the different dates on which the changes have happened. You have the libraries available to you. This is the reporting tab. The reporting can be done by email, Excel sheets, and different ways are available for that. User just have to upload the proof of compliance. System will check whether you are compliant or delayed compliant, and likewise. So so just like this, you will have a user from EHS, you will have a user from labor laws, you will have users from legal team, you will have users from taxation for CFO services, you will have users from secretary team as well. So these are the mix of it. Then you can also generate a certificate from the ESG compliance perspective or overall perspective, depending upon what is your ask. So you can generate these certificates, and these certificates are reasonably uh, comprehensive to give you overall status as well as the breakup of it. Now, but this is very, very important. Why? Because unless and until you know the compliance, and once you know the compliance, then only you can get to know whether you're doing it or not doing it. You cannot start just assessing the impact of our operations, because an opportunity is very, very important to be given to every department for them to at least know their obligations under environmental, social security, and governance, so that they can plan the implementation of it to the extent practically possible and then analyze the impact of it. Because unless and until we do that, because most of these impact, what we see, whether you are emitting green gases or not, whether what is the level of discharge you are having, all these are part of some regulation or the other. So the first thing is, that's why I started this entire, or the focus of this entire uh, conversation is around compliances. So you have these masters. If you want to refer to to any statute for any specific purposes. You want to see the checklist under any particular law. So you can have this checklist available to you. You can just click here and see the entire details like this. You can filter if what are the returns. Again, just have a. So this is from the social security perspective. This is PT. You can see the exemptions also. So everything comes to you handy. In the library, you have these formats and notifications available. So what is very, very important while we are assigning the responsibility of on the users, it is very, very important to equip them or enable them so that they can at least plan and implement in the right manner. Then obviously the audit, impact assessment things can follow. And accordingly, whenever there is a legal update, these technology platforms are robust enough to provide you right legal updates at the right point of time to the right users. So this is an overall scenario. I just stop here and I'll open this session for any queries. I'm sure there are certain queries from the users. I'll devote my time on that side.
I think, Gaurav, there is a question from Manish Bhatia, which talks about that what will be the baseline, for implementing ESG for an IT organization, and also what is the role of internal audit in ESG compliance?
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Manishji, for posting this question. Look, as I said, while we see most of the reports or the formats that are being even posed to us is they are asking for impact assessment. Now, impact assessment can only come up unless until, as I said, the team is aware that as an IT organization, okay, so what are the obligations on you? Say, for example, you have a rented premises, then you are under no obligation to check the DG set which is belonging to a builder, right? And the builder is using that DG set for the entire building. To what extent the obligation of that comes on your organization? Vis-a-vis, if the DG set is owned by or is being installed by your organization as an IT organization. So, as I said, the most important, the first stage is, Manishji, to understand the compliance obligations from the ESG perspective, then see what level of discharges, what level of welfare provisions you should have been required to do, whether they are in place or not. If they are in place, whether they are effectively in place or not. And to what is the effectiveness levels, that is something which you have to report. So that is what my take is. Now, as an auditor, or I would say, if you see the suggestive reports or the format that is coming in, it's a mix of two. They have the statements also, it has the data points also. But again, I would say the role of auditor would be ideally complete if we are also enabling them or guiding them, which IAs have always been doing. They're not the ones who are only identifying the problems, they are also the ones who are suggesting the best practices or the best ways within the levels of the scope or the level of independence they have to maintain within the same organization. So please advise if I'm able to respond to your query, or do you want to know more around it?
I I think Manish has not written anything more, in fact, but I'll just add to what Gaurav has replied so nicely, that there is a position paper on internal audit and ESG by Institute of Internal Auditors, Florida. So if anybody goes to their website and just downloads that paper, you will get comprehensively understand, where I think what Gaurav said is also pointed out in that paper, that it is not only looking at the data, but how the data has been arrived at, what will be the data points, looking at whether the assurance given by the management is right or not right, because the data crunching is so elaborate. Though Gaurav made it sound so simple in his presentation, but ESG is a holistic exercise which encompasses the entire organization and has got data points from internal and external sources both. So that makes it a very complex exercise. So the internal auditor's role also cannot be put down in black and white exactly, because there's such a lot of help which the internal auditor would like to with the management would expect a lot of help from the internal auditor per se to ensure that you arrive at a framework for ESG and then go on monitoring it on a regular basis.
I think Mr. Jairam has shared some links in
Yes.
reference to this query. What
Jairam
DG
has
sir
shared the white
yes.
paper, which is there on the IA website. The link is there. So anybody who's interested can just pick it up and, use it.
So it's as I said, if I take as a layman perspective, supposedly my data points come up that we are emitting so much of energy or we are emitting so much of particular gases. Now, whether that is within the limits or not, that can only be checked from the compliances part of it, whether it's noise, air, or water. So that's why I said this compliance is the starting point of it. Otherwise, you will not be able to relate whether the data points are within the ambit of the acceptable standards or not.
I don't see any other questions, but I think, Jairam, would you like to add anything?
Sir, I was just checking on YouTube also. There are no comments or questions on YouTube.
So I think with the permission of Gaurav and all the participants, we can you could kindly extend a vote of thanks to Gaurav. I'd just like to add before you extend a formal vote of thanks that this selected a wonderful session, Gaurav, and I think he made it sound very simple, in very simple terms. Though this is such a complex topic on which everybody is experimenting, exploring, and trying to find out how to make it happen. The framework, the technology platform which Gaurav has makes it interesting and makes it easy for people to latch on to measure it on a continuous basis. So I think over to you, Jairam.
Thank you, Deepji sir. Gaurav, we would like to extend our thanks on behalf of all the attendees, all the members who've registered, and also on behalf of Sama Audit Systems and Software Private Limited for giving us a wonderful presentation, very insightful. And as they say, brevity is the soul of it. So you've kept the presentation very simple with a lot of convenient and easy to understand visuals. So thank you for being with us, Gaurav, and sharing your knowledge and experience.
Thank you, DG sir. Thank you, Jairam, and thanks to all the participants of this session. And I'll share this presentation with you, Jairam sir. You can, if you want to upload it somewhere, you can use it for the members.
Your slides which you've cast will be part of the YouTube recording, which would be on the Analytics Wednesday YouTube channel of Sama. So members can always pick it up from there. And
Perfect.
Once again, Gaurav ji, thank you so much. And thank you, attendees, for being with us this evening. And we look forward to seeing you yet again for another insightful session on the coming Wednesday. Wish everyone a good evening. Gaurav ji, have a wonderful evening and a great stay in Bombay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Please take care. Thank you.